Hey, one good way to improve your modeling and improve your design, practice, grow with Fusion 360 is to go follow along with other tutorials like on this channel. So I've been going back through the Model Mania. It's a SolidWorks event. It's this competition. It takes 3 minutes, whatever. They give you a model and then some design changes at the end. And so you effectively have to make one model and then kind of modify it and all do it within time. And, you win prizes if you're the fastest. Speed, not really important, but it's cool to go through some of these models where someone's gone through and efficiently modeled it with design change in mind. So it's been really helpful for me to go back through because some of them are actually kind of tricky. All right, so here's the finished model, at least for phase one. And a few of the challenges that when I'm first looking at this, is this kind of rounded and angled slope. This face, that actually looks kind of confusing to me. This shape, when I look up from the top view, that's not too challenging. That looks like a pattern, right? Looks like one of these. So this isn't too bad. And then I think you would pattern it. And then this hole that's also a pattern, that one actually does look tricky because it's a counterbore that's sitting low. Strategies. Number one, definitely use pattern. Number two, we're going to do a rounded surface that we're going to extrude up to. That's huge. Sometimes I forget you can just create a rounded surface. Kind of like this one. So I can use this rounded surface and then extrude up to that to create a more complex shape. Very cool. I like that. And then modifying Hole Wizard or tricking it to be able to drop a counterbore hole down low. That'll be interesting. And then going into the second part of the design. Let's look at how to model this in Fusion 360. Starting on the top plane, I sketch a couple circles. Look for some circles, sketch those out. I'm in millimeter, want to make sure that my document settings look good. Hit D for smart dimension, and 22 millimeter and 16. So nothing crazy. And then I circle off to the left and hit D for dimension, 12, and dimension from point to point. And that is 35. And now it starts to get interesting. Now, remember that that dimension doesn't anchor this down. It just shows the distance. I'm going to select the 2 points and do horizontal. Now that's locked in space. And I'm going to sketch kind of from this quadrant up. And I don't know where it goes. Do another line. Now, these are going to be equal. I know that, so I can make them equal. And I know the angle. Select both lines and 22. Okay, that's not quite there yet, right? Because you can see it's pretty crazy. So I'll undo those movements. 22. Now we want to extend that with a line. Hey, if you like these tutorials, hit that like button and leave a comment. YouTube really likes that and it'll help me grow the channel. Thanks. So I can do a line coming up from the center going vertical, and I'll do another line going down, and we can extend this until it hits. And I do want tangency, so that's the other thing. So I'll do line to arc tangent, same thing. There we go. That's better. It's gonna be better behavior. Cool. Now we could do just an extent. Do S for search, extend. And we don't have to do this to clean it up, but sometimes mentally it's nice just for, a nice clean sketch is easier to read, easier to look at, easier to modify sometimes. Okay, so how about, how do we get this symmetric? A couple ways you can do that. We can do a center line and just align it. So I'll hit X for construction, and I think it's the construction line first, and then these two lines, and select all three in that order, and then do symmetry. And are we not quite yet? Equal, and these two lines should be equal. There we go. Cool. All right, so this sketch looks pretty good, and then we'll start to extrude it. Just extrude that going up extrude that cylinder at 22. Perfect. And now this is where it gets interesting. You're going to sketch a line off in space. And this sketch line is going to be a revolve or a surface. Okay, so there we go. This line out in space. And a few things we know about the line is it's at 112 degrees to this angle, and it's 6 millimeters off from that edge. And it needs to be extended to reach the other sketch. That's what I have. I've aligned it. So whenever you need to reference another sketch, hit P for project and select the edge, or this edge, and then you can reuse that as a reference. So if I'm going to do a line, so I can do P, do it again. There you go. It projects it. Awesome. And then we'll sketch a line coming up. We'll do construction, and it's connected at that point. So if we were to test it, if this circle ever gets longer, then this line should extend out a little bit, or adjust anyways. Okay, so we have this line, and that looks good. And we're going to do a surface revolve. Great. And we'll select this surface, and we'll do this angled line, this axis in the center. And we can see this nice new surface body. And we're using this as a guide. Pretty cool. Something to keep in mind. You don't have to achieve something in one feature. You can sometimes just extrude it up. Okay, so now for the tricky part of extruding up to hit this. Now, there is a gotcha with Fusion 360. You cannot just extrude what you want to hit by default. It won't just work. It wasn't for me. So go up to Object, select the surface, and it will fail. And I tested a bunch of different things. So it seems to solve much better when you use adjacent faces. This seems to be the gotcha for me. I tested on a couple different parts. So this selected face I thought should work, but it needs this adjacent faces. Okay, now turn off that body. Great. All right, now for the hole wizard. So this one's interesting because in the Solidworks Model Mania, they effectively just drop it in and then manipulate the sketch in which it derives, which we can't do that. We just have a feature that we're editing. So what I did was I selected this top face as the reference and then dragged this over until it referenced that center hole, or an axis. You could create some sort of reference that you connect to, but that was good. But I used the counterbore and clearance. So I used the sizing. So I went down and found M4. Great. And then click off of that. So I click now to simple, and it keeps that shape for me. And then I can manipulate this until I come up to a distance. So I know that when I came in and measured, so when I measured this face, in the SolidWorks sketch, I know that that's supposed to be 4 millimeters. And so when I come in and find this extends here, that this 39 gives me the 4 millimeters. So I just adjusted that to hit. So not quite as easy as SolidWorks, but it is possible. It's doable. So next is the circular pattern. So that one's pretty easy. Turn on the circular pattern for features. And what we want to do is pattern this whole feature and the whole feature. So I'm doing both, right? The whole and the solid. So I got both, and then this axis, doing 3 of those. So it's doing all of it at once, and then we come in and start adding fillets. Easy fillet of 22 millimeters in these 3 corners. Then select the outer edge, go all the way around at 1 millimeter. Do that again. Cool thing is the tangency does a nice job of finding everything just by selecting once. So that one's pretty easy. And then the final fillet up here of 1 millimeter at that edge. Great. So this is phase 1. Okay, let's get into phase 2. Okay, so this is our end goal. A few things that get modified. We modify the angle distance, so we go back and we change this to 8 degrees instead of 22. So double click, change your sketch from 22 down to 8, and then hit rebuild. Okay, now the things that we have to come in and do, we're here. Okay, so now how do we create that kind of cutout part? Now there's several ways you can do it. Because it's uniform, shell does work. So I can do shell and I can do faces. So I'll do these 3 faces, and I believe it's 3mm. We shell that out. Great. Now here's where it gets interesting. There's a face fillet in Solidworks, and it allows you to do a nice fillet between these 2 faces and not have to calculate everything. But in Fusion 360, we don't have that luxury. We can't use that feature. There is a rule fillet, but it's not designed to be used for faces just yet, from reading the forums. Okay, so how do we create a 30mm fillet that achieves the same thing if I don't have that special fillet that they have in SolidWorks? So I created just a simple circle on the bottom, and I'm going to extrude that up. Now I extrude it up, great, but how do I get it to align nicely with that surface? Now, luckily we have that same surface body. It's that surface body that's perfect. So we'll do an extrusion up to the object. Again, same challenge where you have to come in and do to the object, but you do have to, there we go, to object, and make sure you choose adjacent faces. Now we could come in and do all 3 areas at once because we have 3 fillets to fill in. And hide that surface body once we're done. Join it together. And so you can see it creates that similar effect to the fillet that they were doing. And then adding the fillets as a finish. The big one that I'd want to show you for sure is this. I believe it's a 1mm inside. So if we do fillet, face, we want to do all of the interior faces that it's going to touch. And we don't have to go around and do all 3. We can do those 3, and we'll do 1mm. Great. Now how do you can actually pattern that around. So a circular pattern, S for search. I'm going to do features. I'm going to do just the fillet and select the axis of this circle. It brings it all the way around. Great. Optimized works, but adjust does not solve. In this case, it fails. So don't forget to look at your options here, your compute options. Cool, so then we can add these remaining fillets and we're done. Hey, thanks for watching. If you're looking for more of these Model Mania style tutorials, be sure to check those out. I'll put those in the link.